very complicated, and you all know that. Beyond the creative struggle, many music makers now have to be their own digital content creators, publicists, managers, business partners, you name it. With the massive upheaval of the coronavirus pandemic, things have only gotten murkier and more difficult. So that's why we at ASCAP decided to bring you Sound Advice. In these sessions, we'll take some of the most important questions asked by music makers today and answer them with a panel of industry experts. This week, we discuss a question that every songwriter has had at some point. I wrote a song, so now what? To help me demystify how to take care of your song once it's ready to meet the world, let's welcome ASCAP Director and Deputy Editor Etan Rosenbloom, President and co-founder of Penn Music Michael Eames, and singer-songwriter and entrepreneur Jamie Kent. Take it away.
Hello, everybody. I'm Etan Rosenbloom from the marketing department at ASCAP, joining you from my home in sunny North Hollywood, California. Thanks for tuning in to the ASCAP Experience Home Edition, into our very first sound advice session called I Just Wrote a Song, Now What? So the idea behind this is that music creators, especially early on in your careers, don't get a lot of great guidance about what you do after you finish writing a song, putting those finishing touches on it. So how do you get it out there, and how do you get paid for it? And we could devote an entire session to any of the topics that we're going to discuss today, and we will in the coming weeks of sound advice. But my hope for today is that you'll come away with a few concrete steps you can take once the creative work is done, and maybe even once we say goodbye today. So the stuff we're talking about today, just letting you know, will be most relevant to songwriters and performers who write their own music. If you're a film, TV composer or a producer, we'll have panels specific to you coming up very soon. Oh, and one last note, send us some questions in the chat box. We'll hopefully have a few minutes at the end to answer a couple of them. Now, on to my special guests. First up is my good friend, Jamie Kent. He's logged over 1,000 shows and shared the stage with Reba McEntire, Huey Lewis and the News, Brandy Clark, and more. His last album, All American Mutt, debuted at number 16 on the Billboard Top Country Albums chart. And at that time, it was the only indie release on the chart. He's also the founder of a consulting business called Band Ambassador Media Group, and he helped launch the nonprofit People Supporting Artists back in March as a way to facilitate artist support in the good times and the bad times. Hello, Jamie.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me, man.
Of course. And second, Michael Eames. He is the president and co-founder of Penn Music Group, going strong for 26 years now. He's a past president of the Association of Independent Music Publishers, a teacher, an author, and a songwriter himself. Thank you for joining us, Michael.
My pleasure, from nearby Studio City, California.
There you go. I'll see you at Aroma Cafe when this all blows up.
Exactly, when it's all over.
So, Michael, I had a preliminary question for you. So a lot of the rights and processes that we're going to talk about today, they pertain to either just writers and publishers, the composition side, or just the performer and master side, which we might call the recording. So can you talk a little bit about the difference between those two and why it's important for a songwriter to understand that difference?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, taking the songwriting side first, you know, at ASCAP or any performing rights organization, there are two separate memberships, the writer membership and the publisher membership. Don't assume that when you join as a writer, you've joined as a publisher. They're two separate things, and we'll probably touch upon, you know, the various reasons why you do that throughout our time today. And, you know, they are both memberships, when tied to registrations of your songs, which we'll get to shortly, you know, that's the method by which you get paid through performances, whether they be live for internet, radio, TV, etc., both domestically and abroad. On the master side, you know, master recording is a separate copyright from the underlying song. Maybe they'll be the same owners, maybe they won't. But we're going to touch upon sound exchange a little bit later, which is one aspect of that, of the sound recording copyright, but they are separate and distinct, and both actually have unique income streams unto themselves. So you just need to know that they're two different worlds, and we'll touch upon some of the specifics, I'm sure, as we get going.
Cool, thank you. So just to recap, you've got the underlying composition, which is what you writers do, and it's also represented by a publisher, which may or may not be you, the writer. And then you have the recording side, the master side. That's the raw recording of it. So the way I like to describe it to people, it's sort of like, think of all the composition or all the recordings of, Heard It Through the Grapevine. There's only one person who actually wrote it, the writer and a publisher.
Right.
And anytime that song is performed by anybody, that person will get some income. But that's as distinct from all the hundreds of masters, the different recordings of that song that exist.
Yep, absolutely. Good point.
All right, cool. So, Jamie, let's say you've just written a hot single with a collaborator. Before you leave the room or the Zoom writing session, what have you, what do you need to make sure to do?
I think one of the most important things you can do if you are collaborating and co-writing is to get the splits in writing in some way, whether it is a sheet that you bring in that has you fill in the percentages and both sign, or it's an email that goes out right after that says, hey, this is the demo of the song. Here are the lyrics. Here's who wrote it. Here's what each person owns. Every city is a little different. In general, Nashville tends to split it equally within whoever's in the room gets an equal share. That's not always the case in other cities. There's a joke in Nashville: a word for a third. So if you're in there and you say a word, you now own it. But everyone's got different opinions, so it's good to just communicate it clearly, and it's good to put it out there. I think that the splits also become really important on the master side too, depending on how you write. If you're writing for a country artist, say, and this isn't going to be a final master recording, then you're just worrying about the publishing side. If you're worrying about if you're with a track producer and you're making a song to pitch to a TV show, then that's a master recording as well. So you have to talk about who owns the master share of that too, because it's two sides of it and both are going to get pitched. So all of those things you gotta put in writing and you gotta put out there. And then right after that, go home and register that thing on ASCAP. So go log into your songwriting side, log into your publishing side, and put it up there. Link it in with the other writers, and just get it done. Get it done early. Then you don't have to worry about it. Then you kind of put your stamp out there. It's in there, and then you can come back to it later. If you've pitched it, if it lands somewhere, then you don't have to be scrambling and seem unprofessional down the road.
Cool. That's fantastic advice. I understand you have an anecdote about what can go wrong if you don't get those splits out early on.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, especially I've learned the hard way that putting things in writing is really helpful. And sometimes it seems like you're, killing the buzz in the room by talking about legal things in the moment. But I've been in a situation where there's a handshake amongst everybody in the room, 3 different people, that it was an equal split on publishing, but that the master share weighted heavily more towards the producer and the artist and less towards the third person in the room, which is a standard thing, handshake amongst everybody. But then once it landed a big placement and it wasn't in writing anywhere, suddenly the publishers involved went, wait a minute, we never heard that. Where's this handshake deal in writing? And now, suddenly once money gets involved, it becomes a lot harder to negotiate those things. So just get it done, get it down, and you don't have to worry about it.
All right. So that is great advice. And we actually have a site up on, or a page up on ASCAP.com where you can learn more about the hows and the whys of getting all your splits down properly in writing and with your PRO. So you can visit ascap.com/splits, SPLITS, for more info on that. So Jamie, this is something that I know almost nothing about. I'm not a music creator myself, but I know that there are so many choices you can make as to what to do with your song production-wise once you've written it. So can you talk a little bit about the kinds of choices that music creators can make about producing and some of the factors you might want to think about when you're choosing a producer?
Yeah, I think to me, especially today, over any other time, it's really important to be intentional with every song you write and every song you put out into the world. So when I write a song now, I used to just write to write. And now when I write a song, I go, okay, is this for me? Is this for another artist? Is this to go to film and TV? And you go into that with that mindset. And then that helps you shoot with a sniper rifle instead of a shotgun. So when you come out of it, you can say, okay, this one's for me. So do I want to rent a studio, hire a producer, hire a mixing engineer, hire a band, or bring in my band? And what's the budget to do that? Okay, is it going to be $2,000 a song to do that? All right, then you plan for that. Or if you are just getting started and you don't have that kind of budget, can you build a track for yourself? Can you write with another producer who builds tracks? And in that case, maybe you believe in each other, and maybe you can think of yourselves as a label and you split the master ownership together. That's a really a common thing happening now with people doing stuff from home, saving money, going in on it together, saying, you know what, let's both share ownership, risk, and reward in this. And I think that there's a lot of potential with that now that we can't be on the road making money to save for budgets, to have big producers right now. I'm a big fan of that, sharing the risk, being in it together, and producing music at a low cost because you're not necessarily selling the albums that you were on the road. So you have to depend on streaming money, which is not significant if you're an indie artist. So unless you hit a big playlist, unless it aligns perfectly. So I tend to take the approach of let's keep the costs down, share the risk together, and see if we can all make money together.
Cool. So it sounds like there are a lot of different models to look into and new possibilities that are just emerging now.
Yeah.
So Jamie, you had mentioned a little bit ago during the splits talk, the importance of registering with a PRO. So can you talk a little bit about like the core job that a performing rights organization like ASCAP does?
Yeah, absolutely. So the core job of ASCAP is to collect royalties for us songwriters on public performance. So if you're out playing shows, they're collecting royalties from those venues. If a song of yours appears on a TV show, they're collecting it from the back end of the public performance of that in the TV show. Same goes for if your song plays on the radio, they're collecting for there as well. So they're really out there fighting for us to collect our money as songwriters, and that's it's a really huge service, and we can't thank you enough. I mean,
I appreciate that, man. As the sole representative of ASCAP on that, on
yes,
this call, thank you.
I know it's all you, Etan, and I appreciate it.
So Jamie is totally right. The basic idea is we are going out to all the bars, the restaurants, the venues, but also radio stations, streaming services, television stations, you name it, and collecting money from them for the right to use your music in a public way in their restaurant or on their service. And then that money becomes the royalties that we then send to you. So we're doing all that work for you, but the thing that you need to do to get that money is register with ASCAP and tell us what the name of your song is and what the splits are. So that's on the writer side, but there are also very good reasons why, if you're a songwriter, you should also sign up with ASCAP as a publisher. So Michael, can you talk a little bit about that? For a writer that isn't repped by a publisher like Penn, what's the benefit of signing up for a publishing company with ASCAP?
Absolutely, yeah. Really, it's main public way of stating ownership in something. What I think so many beginning songwriters don't understand is that as soon as you write a song and as soon as you put it in some sort of tangible form, you have your copyright, but you are the songwriter and the publisher, because being the publisher means that you are the owner. You control all those rights. So until you sign another piece of paper transferring those rights, either whole or in part, to someone else, you are the publisher. So, a lot of songwriters feel like, oh, well, I only want to sign up as a writer, and then maybe I'll register things and put my publisher's share with my writer's share. But, that becomes really problematic in the world of film and TV, where we spend so much time. where there's a document called a cue sheet that lists the chronological listing of all the music used in a project. And it's got separate columns for the writer and separate column for the publisher. And, you know, those cue sheets get circulated around the world to all the other ASCAPs, you know, in every other territory. And if they go to input a cue sheet and see a songwriter name on the publisher side and can't match it to a publisher, more often than not, you're going to lose your publishing share because they don't understand that you've maybe registered everything back in your home country under your writer's share. So it's really critical and worth that extra fee to sign up as a publisher, because every publishing company name in the world gets cleared where it's a unique name. It's yours. It stays with your songs once you register them. That information gets disseminated everywhere. And it's really an important distinguisher, because, you know, I don't think there's too many Jamie Kents, but a lot of people's names are very similar to other songwriters' names. And the way in which you can sometimes tell them apart is via the publishing company, not the name, songwriter name.
Exactly. So the basic idea is when ASCAP is paying you royalties for a performance of your music, half of the money is reserved for you as a songwriter, half of the money is reserved for you as a publisher. And we can't pay you all of that money unless you're set up as both a writer and a publisher in our system. So
Correct.
Do it. ASCAP.com/join, make it happen. All right. So Jamie, I had a question for you. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that ASCAP does beyond just paying you royalties. So can you talk about some of the other ways that you've been involved with ASCAP?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Etan, and I feel like I can speak to it personally in a really strong way. That, you know, as you grow as an artist, the things like collecting royalties, collecting radio play royalties, playing stadiums, and collecting the royalties from that, those are huge for many artists. But for the majority of us artists that are just at the beginning stages, where we may not be getting that radio play, or we might not have that song on a TV station, ASCAP has so many resources that can truly help you get to that point. A big way is just networking and connecting with other songwriters. A lot of people don't realize it, but ASCAP provides and curates writers' workshops in, I think, 5 different cities. And that does it a couple of times a year. I've been a part of them in LA and in Nashville. And I think I did 2 in Nashville and 1 in LA. And honestly, I did it right when I moved to Nashville 7 years ago. And 3 of the people I met in that workshop are some of my best friends now. I've written songs with them that have been on my albums, their albums, on TV shows. It immediately gave me a group of people that were all working hard, great, curated by ASCAP as kind of the next in line, and just look into those resources. ASCAP also does a handful of showcases at various festivals and events around the country, and I've been lucky enough to play those. I played an ASCAP Writers Round at the Bluebird. I got booked to play an ASCAP stage at Pilgrimage Festival. It's been really a powerful tool to help get me out there as an artist. And so there's resources that go beyond just royalty collection. And I encourage everybody to kind of dig through the ASCAP website for those, because they're on there.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, Etan, even from my perspective as a publisher, you know, all the great things that Jamie's mentioning are things that we in the publishing world also take advantage of. Like, we love going to all of the showcases and the events so that we can hear new talent and get exposed to new talent, you know, and just the network amongst all of us. I've been referred so many different sort of songwriter clients over the years. In fact, probably the oldest client I have, I signed an admin deal in 1997 with, that I still have to this day, who is a proud ASCAP member. And just all the things that you guys do, from the expo to, frankly, this experience. And I think today's even the first edition of ASCAP's Experience Home Edition. And you know, these are all incredible tools, because it's important for us as publishers, for songwriters, to understand all of the ways in which you have to take care of your business. It's become important more than ever that everyone gets that.
Well, thank you for saying that, Michael.
So true.
Stop blushing, Etan. Come on.
No, I promise. We do pay Michael as a publisher when his music is performed, but there have not been any extra payments going to Michael.
Not at all. Not at all.
All right, so we've only got about 10 minutes left, so I want to plow through some other important concepts. We got a question from a user named Stovelp that says, is it a good idea to register with Sound Exchange? So, Michael, can you really briefly explain what Sound Exchange is and why you might want to sign up with them?
Sure, absolutely. Kind of the easiest way, given that you are ASCAP and we're talking about publishing stuff, I'm going to kind of just do the analogy of Sound Exchange is the ASCAP of the master recording world. So, you know, in the late 90s, the Digital Home Recording Act established the ability for sound recordings to earn digital performance or earn performance royalties in the digital space. And Sound Exchange was born. The main sources of income that come through Sound Exchange are internet radio and satellite radio. So like Sirius XM and Pandora, I believe are which I think even are now one company. They're the main source of income for Sound Exchange. So much like you do at ASCAP, where you register your writer shares and your publisher shares, they have a similar pie at Sound Exchange where half the pie gets paid to whoever owns the master. That could be one if it's just one record label, or it could be multiple people like Jamie mentioned earlier. And then on the other half of the pie is the featured artist or artist side, where they break it out where 45% of the featured artist side goes to the featured artist, and then the remaining 5% gets allotted amongst all the side musicians, all of which have to get registered and put into the database at Sound Exchange. And then they collect all the data, collect the money, and just like ASCAP, pay out to both of those separate sides.
Okay, so since we're talking about master side and a performer, recording artist, would it make sense to sign up for both ASCAP and Sound Exchange, assuming that you perform your own music?
Yeah, assuming that you perform your own music, absolutely. It's a great habit to get into. And I can see that, you know, the question by this person here, you said, are there any books you can recommend on the subject? There's really, the best thing is just to go to soundexchange.com. They go into a pretty great description about who they are, how they calculate things, and you can even search whether you have money sitting there even before you register.
Well, Jamie, are you a member of Sound Exchange?
Yep, I am as well.
Good stuff. Do it. All right, we want to move on really quickly to copyright registration. So as Michael described earlier, as soon as you write a song and put it in some kind of fixed form, and that could be a voice memo or writing it on a piece of paper, writing it on computer software, whatever, you own the copyright on that song. But you can take an extra step of actually going to copyright.gov and registering it with the Library of Congress. And Michael, can you explain briefly why that's a good idea?
Yeah, the main reason really is for, you know, once it's fascinating, once a song and a recording gets out there, what can happen with it? It's kind of a fascinating journey to watch. But one of the things that unfortunately comes up is that sometimes your work gets used without your permission, or stolen, you know, or infringed in lots of different ways. And the main reason for registering a copyright with the Copyright Office is that if it gets to a point where you feel you need to initiate a lawsuit against someone, you're not able to go into court until you have the form back from the Copyright Office that has been processed and been given its official copyright number. And also, once you have that and you're in the court, you become entitled to get what they refer to in the court system as statutory damages. So if it gets determined that your work was infringed, the law actually provides you to get up to $150,000 per infringement. So it's really just a matter of protection that is the main reason to sort of do it. Not everyone registers everything, but I'd say once you put something out on a record, it's a good idea to explore doing that.
Right. And what I've heard recently is that because of the coronavirus, the Library of Congress has made it easier to register your works electronically. So they've relaxed some of those requirements on sending in physical copies of things. You don't have to do that anymore. If you want, go to copyright.gov/coronavirus and you can get all the info. All right, I want to move on really quick. We only have about 5 minutes to talk about distribution. In other words, getting your music where people can listen to it or purchase it. Once you've done the dirty work of creating and recording, next is getting it to the people. So let's talk about digital distribution, because not a lot of us are going to record stores right now, sadly. Jamie, do you have to submit to each of the streaming services directly to get your stuff in there?
No, you can use a digital distributor that's sort of an aggregator of sorts. There's a bunch out there. CD Baby is one of them. TuneCore is another one. DistroKid, 1RPM. There's a whole slew of them out there, and you pay. Each of them has a different model. So one of them you pay an annual fee, and they don't take a percentage. One of them just takes a percentage, but there's no annual fee. One of them you can pay a subscription and upload as much. One of them is album or song to song in terms of a fee. So really go and spend some time on each, see which one your style of music happens to maybe resonate with the most on those people, because they might have a team that's best at pitching it to that streaming company within the singer-songwriter realm, or within a hip-hop realm, or within a pop realm. Another thing to think about, and this is kind of a new feature that DistroKid offers that I find super useful, and I think the other ones, I'm sure it'll catch up soon, but DistroKid offers a tool to automatically send royalties, master splits, and collections to your co-writers and to your master owners, which is so useful because it's so hard to discern streaming income. If you have multiple songs and albums out there, when you get whatever money comes in, it's really difficult to see what comes from where. And so if it's set up to automatically distribute it for you to your co-writers, it makes it a world easier.
No, it does sound nice. So just to recap, the distributor is the way that you get your music onto iTunes and Spotify and Pandora, all the other digital services at once. And
Exactly.
I'm not even sure about this. So when somebody downloads something from or a Jamie Kent song on iTunes, is it the distributor that's paying you, or do you get paid directly from iTunes?
The distributor. So the iTunes pays the distributor, they take their cut, and then they pay you.
Got it.
It's really a few people are taking their cut. iTunes takes theirs first, then the distributor, then you.
Okay, we only have a few minutes, but I wanted to touch briefly on mechanical royalties before we end. So, Michael, this is your domain. Can you really quickly describe what is meant by mechanical royalty, and more importantly, what a songwriter can do to get set up to earn mechanical income after they've written a song?
Sure. All right. This is going to be a speed demon situation here with the amount of time we have left. So a mechanical royalty, the name comes from the fact that when a song gets mechanically reproduced, that's the historical context, the reproduction itself is what generates a royalty. So, obviously when we used to be in the world of manufacturing CDs, every new unit required a new royalty per song. Now we're in the world, your question you just asked Jamie, when there was a download on iTunes of Jamie's song, the publishing mechanical royalty for Jamie's song went to the distributor and then went to Jamie, and then he either had to pay out co-writers, whether through his DistroKid thing he mentioned or what. The new form of mechanical that's really important to understand is the interactive streamers that we're all flocking to now, Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Amazon, where you're able to choose what to listen to. Those are interactive streamers, and every time there's a stream, it generates a performance royalty, which goes through your PRO and through ASCAP, and it generates a mechanical royalty. However, those mechanical royalties are not going back to the distributor. They have to be paid by the streaming service itself. So again, to make a very long story short, that it's worth mentioning to everyone is that the Music Modernization Act that was passed and signed by Trump in October 2018 established a group called the Mechanical Licensing Collective. It goes into operation January 1 of 2021. And everyone who releases music is going to need to ensure that they register their works with the MLC. And to get a lot more, I'm on one of the committees for the MLC. You can literally go to themlc.com, and it lays out in really great detail and clarity what to do and sign up on email lists to get informed about it. But it's really going to be crucial to get the streaming mechanicals going forward.
Cool. Thank you. We're unfortunately out of time, but tune into the next sound advice and the next 3 after that, and we'll go a lot deeper into some of the issues that we talked about today. Thanks for watching, everybody.